One thing we love about our favorite Marvel movies is that they invoke such a wide range of emotions. Avengers Infinity War was a game changer in many ways. It made even lighthearted and happy moments seem tragic, and we'll show you which scenes are now too sad to watch. But before we take a look at some MCU scenes that now bring a tear to our eye due to Infinity War, subscribe to CBR and ring that bell to join our notification squad so you never miss any of our MCU videos. Loner. During Guardians of the Galaxy, we met a ragtag bunch of aliens who weren't known for their superior social skills. We saw them come together with the rather important goal of, saving the universe and develop a friendship with one another along the way. By the time Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 rolled around, the Guardians had grown quite close, with one notable exception. Rocket Raccoon was having trouble adjusting to his new lifestyle, to say the least, and was clearly doing everything within his power to push his friends away. Opening yourself up and letting people in can be terrifying, and Rocket clearly found it more frightening than facing monstrous villains. During the second movie, he had a heart-to-heart with Yondu, who related to Rocket on a deep level. Yondu tells Rocket that his antisocial act may fool everyone else, but Yondu sees right through it. He knows that Rocket acts cruel and fearless to mask the fear he has about letting people in, and tries to push away anyone who comes close. In the end, Rocket is able to take strides in letting people in, only to have nearly every single last one of his friends disappear during Infinity War. After facing his deep fears of abandonment, he's now left with only Nebula. Internship. Speaking of characters who have trouble letting others in, let's talk about Tony Stark. Basically, Avengers Infinity War made the bulk of Spider-Man Homecoming unbearably sad. During one early scene, Peter Parker embraces Tony Stark, who clarifies that he wasn't trying to give him a hug, but was just opening the door for him. At the time, it was hilariously awkward, but considering the fact that Peter Parker died in his arms during Infinity War, it becomes tragic. He finally got that hug, but under the worst circumstances. These two took their time forging a meaningful relationship, only to have it ripped away from them in seconds. Then we have the scene where Spider-Man desperately tries to save a ferry full of people. He seems ready to literally tear himself in two to help others, but it still isn't enough. After Iron Man swoops in and saves the day, he gives Peter a stern lecture, letting him know how disappointed he is. Considering how desperately Peter wanted to prove himself to his hero, this part was hard to watch. Tony says that if someone died, Peter would have been responsible, but if Peter dies, Tony would be responsible. We can't imagine the crushing weight of responsibility Tony feels at the end of Infinity War when Peter died and Tony could do nothing to save him. Vision. It's understandable that humans would want to save other living creatures, but Vision is an android powered by the Mind Stone. Despite this, he still puts himself at risk and dedicates himself to protecting the human race. During Avengers Age of Ultron, we see Vision offer the possibility that he may be a monster, and admit that he wouldn't know if he was one. Although he was fighting on the right side, his moral quandaries about himself and his existence continued into Captain America: Civil War. In order to avoid Vision being an unstoppable strong character, he had to be given a weakness in the form of painful self-awareness. How many of us non-heroes can relate to that? During Civil War, we saw Vision attempting to cook and care for Wanda Maximoff, and essentially be more human. He admitted that he feared the Mind Stone and the effects it may have on him. Then, during Infinity War, we saw Vision get his wish about having the Mind Stone removed, but not quite in the best way. Vision was willing to sacrifice his own life in order to save others, and begged his beloved Wanda to destroy the Mind Stone, but then, through some time manipulation, Thanos rendered his sacrifice pointless and showed that the Mind Stone really would be his downfall. Hero. There's no question that Loki is one of the most popular villains in the MCU, and it's not hard to see why. If you think about it, Odin has been a pretty rotten father. He taught his eldest daughter how to conquer and then sealed her away because of it. Not only that, but he erased any mention of her from history, and even her siblings didn't know she existed. Although he's come a long way since then, during the first Thor movie, it was clear Odin had raised Thor to be kind of a pompous jerk, and even Thor realized that he was not prepared to sit on the throne of Asgard. Then there's Loki, who was treated like a second-class citizen, and it was clear all he wanted was to be equal to Thor in his father's eyes. During Thor Ragnarok, Loki had every chance to step back and let Thor be the hero as usual, but he was there for his brother and played an instrumental part in bringing about Ragnarok and saving the day. The movie ended with Thor and Loki smiling affectionately at one another. It was a sincere brotherly moment and a hopeful sign that these two could move forward with their relationship. As Thor says, Loki has died before, but all of this made his fate during Infinity War so much worse. Sorcery. In the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, everyone knows Rocket Raccoon has considerable trouble making friends, but Gamora lived the majority of her life under the thumb of Thanos, and she wasn't able to cultivate much of a social life. Her sister Nebula hated her, and you can just imagine what growing up with Thanos was like. In the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, when she first meets Peter Quill, he tells her that he couldn't care less if she lives or dies, and she has absolutely no reaction to this, but why would she? As she explains later, she was raised to be a weapon, valued only for her strength and not who she is. By the end of the movie, it's clear Gamora has found people who genuinely care about her. She remarks, "I've lived most of my life surrounded by my enemies. I would be grateful to die surrounded by my friends." But even that fate was denied during Infinity War. Gamora died alone, far from her friends, at the hands of the father she despised. Thanos robbed her of her parents, and it took her ages to build her own family that loved her. Then Thanos just took them from her too. This made all of the tender moments between her and Star-Lord all the more heartbreaking. Emotions. Captain America Civil War was an awesome movie, but one which got pretty emotional. Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers have always been the poster children for friendship goals, and they've been utterly devoted to one another long before they were even soldiers. For Tony Stark, making friends hasn't always been quite as easy, but he was sure that he found one with his fellow Avenger, Steve Rogers. Later in the movie, Tony got hit with some seriously emotional reveals when he finds out that Bucky was the one who murdered his parents and that Steve knew about it. Seeing these two heroes and friends fighting was truly heartbreaking, and there's no denying Tony's emotions got the better of him, but it seemed he learned his lesson from this traumatic event. During Infinity War, Tony cautions Peter Quill not to let his emotions get the better of him when dealing with Thanos. You can tell he speaks from experience, and we're guessing he remembers when his emotions led to him trading blows with one of his best friends. Sadly, Peter didn't heed his warning, lashing out at Thanos in a manner similar to the way he attacked Ego when he learned about his involvement in his mother's death. Tony may be Peter Parker's mentor, but he and Peter Quill have a surprising amount in common. United. Our favorite Marvel superheroes often act fearlessly, but during Avengers Age of Ultron, we got some insight into what frightens the mighty Iron Man. The Battle of New York was a cataclysmic event, and it was truly one without precedent for our heroes. When questioned about why he was creating Ultron in the first place, Tony claims that he feels confident handling threats on Earth, but dealing with outer space terrifies him. Those beings from space were far beyond his area of expertise, and as a superhero, he felt as though they were his responsibility. He expresses fear that they might encounter a foe they can't defeat, and Steve Rogers assures him that they will face it together, and if they lose, they will lose together. It's actually quite similar to the rationale Doctor Strange espouses in Infinity War when he explains he would let Tony and Peter die in order to save the Time Stone. During Infinity War, we saw Tony Stark heading out into outer space in order to do battle against Thanos and his Black Order. He was facing his fears, but it wasn't enough. Not only had Tony encountered an apparently unstoppable foe, but at the end of the battle, he and the Avengers were no longer together. Not only has Tony lost so many people he cares about, but you just know he blames himself for their losses. Nova Corp. In the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, we saw our heroes run afoul of the Nova Corp when they were trying to get a hold of the orb, which we now know contained the Power Stone. Sure, they may have jailed our heroes, but this doesn't make them inherently bad, and at the end of the movie, when things got dicey, they responded to Star-Lord's request for help and fought by the Guardians' side to defeat Ronan. One of the most notable members of Nova Corp was Roman Day, played by John C. Reilly. We saw him answer Drax's various questions words about the law and do his best to uphold order in the universe. Once the day is saved, we also see Roman thank Star-Lord for his assistance and mention that his family is alive because of them. Then we see a happy scene showing his wife and adorable child greeting him at home. Although we didn't see Roman during Infinity War, we did get some terrible news. Thanos wiped out the Nova Corp and completely decimated Xandar in order to get the Power Stone. This means that Roman and his family met a terrible end. This definitely makes their appearance during Guardians of the Galaxy way too sad to watch anymore. Selfishness. Captain America stands out as a hero who isn't afraid to sacrifice for the greater good. He provides a stark contrast to Dr. Stephen Strange, who isn't exactly known for thinking of others. He starts out the movie Doctor Strange by being absolutely unbearable, so much so that nobody wants anything to do with him. Although he manages to master some truly impressive powers, thinking of others instead of just himself takes him even more time than mastering the Eye of Agamotto. After being attacked in the Sanctum Sanctorum, Dr. Strange is forced to kill several of his pursuers and then complains about it to Mordo. While he's airing his grievances, Mordo points out that he didn't engage in battle in order to protect other people. Doctor Strange was only interested in saving himself, and even his virtuous actions were performed out of selfishness. During Infinity War, Doctor Strange tells Tony he would happily sacrifice Tony and Peter Parker if it meant saving the Time Stone, but by the end of the movie, we saw him handing over the Time Stone in order to save Tony. Captain America said that heroes don't trade lives, and it's possible that Doctor Strange has finally learned that lesson. Doctor Strange hasn't had the same team building time everyone else has, but it's apparently never too late to learn. Sacrifice. In the realm of Marvel movies, many people consider Avengers Age of Ultron to be one of the weaker offerings, and just when things get tough, Thor announces he has to leave and just sort of takes off. Okay then, see you later, Thor. He decides to treat himself to a nice soak, only to receive a terrifying prophecy in return, which sort of seems fair considering he abandoned everyone. But in the aftermath of Infinity War, Thor's vision seems to make a lot more sense. In this vision, he says he saw a whirlpool that sucks in all hope of life, and at its center is that, and then he points at the Mind Stone. During Infinity War, we saw Thanos arrive in Wakanda seeking the final Infinity Stone, the Mind Stone. He worked through a wormhole created with the Infinity Stone and ultimately obtains the Mind Stone by ripping it out of Vision's head. Then, as we all know, the snap happens to devastating effect. In the Age of Ultron, Eric Selvig asked Thor how to bring down Ultron, and Thor replied, "Sacrifice." This didn't make sense in the context of that movie, but could have been an important clue in Infinity War, where the rest of the prophecy seemed to come into play. Has Avengers Infinity War changed the way you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Let us know which scenes are now far too sad following the events of Infinity War in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure to click on the subscribe button for more MCU videos from CBR. Thanks for watching.